Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the State of the Chain meeting for October 5th, 2018. And today we're going to talk about the direction that we're moving in. And basically there's two angles here. One is to continue with the marketing and sales. That's going to be our fundraising effort. And the second aspect, or the second angle, is going to be in the in development of the chain, or the testing of the chain, or people working with the chain to get it populated with information and to start rolling it out so that we understand how it works, where it works, and when we do issue the beta test to everybody, we're prepared with the strategy for bringing people on, and all the minor details. Actually, they're not so minor. So let me start with some ideas about how the test program could go. And test engineering is, in fact, from my background, it's a pretty disciplined science. I was a test engineer in a space shuttle program for many years, and there's a certain discipline to it. And the background to that falls into, I guess, the scientific method would be the first part, and then there's something called the test methods that are standardized test methods. And most of these involve, controlling your variables, controlling the environment. You have a control system, so you try to isolate other things from the environment. You select a variable, you hold everything else constant, you test a variable, and then you have to test the hypothesis and the null hypothesis would be the anti-hypothesis. So you would say something like, it's cold because it's snowing, and then you have to demonstrate that it's not snowing because it's cold, or whatever your theory is. You have to sort of back it up, and there's some discipline to that. So what I've done is I've created this alpha chain test program, and we're recruiting people in and out of our group here to become part of the test team. And right now we have several participants. Joan and Thomas and Eugene, I believe, will be coming back to help us with this. And we're going to go about a fairly as structured as possible test program. So the objectives of the test are to expand the sandbox. So in essence, this means we're looking to identify and harness the intrinsic motivations of engineers that use the platform. We found that the people who do best in this organization, sandboxing ourselves, are people who have some sort of other deal going on, like they have their own business, or they have their own hobbies, or their own proclivities, or there's some passion that they have that you're trying to pursue, and this blockchain helps them do that. And so they have some intrinsic motivation. So they're part of the team, and there's a great value to them because of that. But they're also part of their own self-actualization role is taking part of this. So this is what we're looking for. So this will require research in several areas, including the ontology that we're going to be using, the user experience of the blockchain itself, and the ethos of the engineering profession, as well as the culture. I mean, what are engineers like? We're not going to try to turn them into all TED speakers. We're going to turn them into, they're going to be who they are, and they're going to play to their strengths. It's going to be a comfortable place because of that. They're not going to be asked to do something that they're not interested or willing to do. So, how's the audio coming through? Everything okay?
I can hear you perfect on Discord. Very good.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's going to be up to us to build this first version of the blockchain. It's just the alpha test, and we cannot promise that we may have to fork it, and we have to erase it and delete it and start over again. So we can't make that promise that this is going to be permanent. So take that with some caution. Don't invest your life in this, or at least make a copy of it so that you can put your information on the next blockchain that comes around. So the co-engineering test process is going to be, we have something called the 6 tenets of curiosity, and that to some seems like these constraints that we put on ourselves, but really it represents the knowledge endowment of the last 25 years of other professionals who have tested this work. So back in Boeing, we did a lot of work in this area. In NAFTA with the Mexican engineers and the universities in the state boards and the licensure boards and National Society of Professional Engineers, National Council of Engineering Examiners and Surveyors. We got a lot of research of the past that have, conveniently been encapsulated in these 6 tenets. So we can simplify our process by assuming that those 6 tenets are valid. And that way we don't have to test for them, we don't have to go off. And that helps us a lot because within those boundaries we can now see the tests that we need to do arise. So just to review those really quick, the first one is the topmost ontology must be belongs to the common. So it can't be Boeing's special way of classifying an airplane is the way we're going to classify all engineers. I mean, that wouldn't work because it's not applicable. So this topmost ontology must be something that everybody can share. It can't be proprietary. A non-competitive ranking system is something that we work with, and it's based around collaboration rather than competition. And I think I could go into some detail on that, but we have done it in the past. So I'd encourage you to research this topic if you have any questions. Self-selecting, so people must self-identify their participation in a community, and this is important because one, it doesn't force us to have some sort of vetting mechanism in place, and it doesn't it's very efficient for us to do the things this way. It also gives us people's intentions. So when they say when they're talking, they're classifying themselves. They're like, these are my intentions, and that's exactly what we want. Anonymity until point of transaction, and then there's the learn, collaborative, teach scale, and then the formation of the asset. So those are the six tenets, just in brief review. So the first thing we do is we're working on an ontology. How are we going to how are we going to classify, or what's going to be like the index or for this? How are we going to organize the data in our database? So we've come up with 4 ontologies: water, land use, energy, and climate. And those 4 things are very special because any type of engineer would fall somewhere in those 4 categories or in multiple points of those 4 categories. And what's they roughly correspond to this is intentional to the mythological elements of water, earth, fire, and air. And that is there's a lot of history. It's part of our culture, is steeped into many different stories and media, and there's any number of so people in general are very familiar with those 4 elements of the earth around us, and we've modernized them, of course, to reality. So instead of this earth, we're talking about land use. That's the application of earth, how we're using it. Fire is limited. Energy is what we're talking about now. Climate instead of air. Because those are the things that impact us in a way that's important. So this is how we arrived at those 4 ontologies. So what's important here is that I think I've used the analogy between an engineer from Boeing and an engineer from Starbucks. They both went to the same engineering school. They both have the same degree. But after a few years working in the other's company, they could never work for the other company. So a Boeing engineer does not hire Starbucks engineers because one of the problems is that their computers don't recognize the ontology that Starbucks uses to describe the engineering activity, and then Boeing and Starbucks doesn't obviously use the Boeing aircraft APA chapters ATA chapters in order to classify engineers. So what the result is, the engineer is sequestered. I mean, they can't move. If they get laid off from Boeing, and we've experienced this in Seattle, whenever there's a layoff, there's all these engineers who can't find work because nobody understands what they do. And that has nothing to do with the productivity of the engineer. So by creating this 3rd degree of ontologies, you can now allow them to mix. So now the Boeing engineer and the Starbucks engineer can classify them against themselves against these ontologies: water, land use, energy, and climate, and all of a sudden they can mix. All of a sudden they're the same, they each have something equal to contribute to that economy. So this is a very, very important component that we're trying to do. We're trying to liberate the engineers from those silos that we've placed them in. And when you do that, then they'll come out and they'll start sharing their contributions, their ideas, their creativity, and their intellect. So some of the study topics there are: what path does any engineer take to match with any other engineer will index to the new ontology. So, I mean, these are things we have to study. We have to look at what happens when you actually do classify somebody different. How do you convert a resume from one form of lexicon to another lexicon? So we have to create a standard test, standard list of engineering disciplines, and weight match them by the 4 elements, and investigate the fusion of innovation as it converts from the new ontology to the old ontology, and can auto-converter be created which converts legacy job descriptions to the new ontology? So these are things that we need, these are questions we like to answer. And the practical way of doing that is using our blockchain to accomplish that. That's what the blockchain is going to be doing. All these are the objectives of that. So I could go through all the other 6 tenets and how our test program would seek to accommodate the special needs or special observations from each of those 6 tenets, and you kind of get the same idea. There's a lot of testing to do. Like, identify various gaps. So if you have a student and a teacher and the gap is really long, how fast are the interactions between them? What's the velocity of those interactions? And these are tests we could set up, in a very simplified way, or we could put them on the blockchain themselves. But these are questions we need to answer because, the velocity of M tokens is a very, very important number. And that's going to come out of that delta between teacher and student. So we understand what we're trying to do, and we have to get into this blockchain and start testing these things. So that's my big pitch for today, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going, why we're doing it. This document in my hand, you can find on the Discord, and it's about 4 pages long, and it's nowhere near complete. We're going to have to get a committee together to discern what we can test, what we can't test, what should be tested, and this is all done on our alpha chain. So it's going to be quite an endeavor. As far as the marketing is concerned, we are. Let me go through some of the things coming through here from the different groups who've sent me the different directors who've sent me their updates for this week. Okay, marketing. We're unveiling a new website for IEBC, and it's really, really slick. And what we're trying to do is get the association between CoEngineers and IEBC straight. Unfortunately, we've had to divide them due to regulatory issues or other non-engineer related reasons. But we can't confuse the public into thinking that they're one place and not the other, and we can't confuse the activities of one with the activities of the other, because CoEngineers IO is the blockchain itself. It's in Switzerland, whereas IEBC.co is a think tank, or we call it innovation bank, and that's located here in the States. And so we have to keep those different. So we're raising money for IEBC, and we're going to have a TGE for CoEngineers.io, and there has to be some some discernment between them, some separation between them. So the 1055 pitch deck will be formalized. Now the pitch deck is what a few of the directors of the IEBC community will be able to go forward with and actually give pitches. So it'll be myself and probably Thomas and Michelle can do it, and anybody who feels comfortable, Bradley, who feels comfortable, Maliki, who feels comfortable with the material, can go into their community and pitch IEBC and the fundraise for the IEBC. And then we have the launch itself of the document. Had been through many revisions. It's a lot shorter. It's a lot simpler now, and it's a very good-looking document. This is all coming out on Monday. We have additional marketing materials. Alicia has this extensive list of media, journalists, influencers in the industries that we're going for. And these aren't things you could just blow them out a tweet. We have to sit down and write them a letter, which is all well and properly constructed with their names, and asking them straight up, write a story about us. Hey, let's talk. Bring, who do you know? Would you like to get involved with? How can we help you with our test program? What do you need to know about blockchain? How can we get you there? So they're going to be there's going to be huddled down work to do. Okay, so that's going to be a lot of face in the screen work. It's not going to be too public. So just if you see some waning of activity here, it doesn't mean that nothing's happening. It might mean more that people are just got their we're just doing the road work or the footwork to the next phase. Talking about that, let's see. Thomas is inside. I think we mentioned a couple of other states of the chain. Thomas, we went to Jacob saying, "Here, help us with this," and they didn't want to cross over the threshold, but they said, "Here, you can have a community practice." And you could be the guy who runs the community practice for blockchain within Jacobs. Well, as it turns out, that's probably by far the most valuable position for him to be in at this point, because he's talking to engineers. And we are a P2P platform, and we can't lose sight of that. Even though we're not an enterprise solution, although there's no reason why we don't produce enterprise solutions, we are not that. We are a P2P project, and the enterprise conveniently is comprised of P2P situations. I think I've told the story. I've spoken with executives of companies who'll tell you all these reasons why they can't use blockchain, but then those same executives will say, "Hey Dan, what's it like having your own business? Hey, what's it like running a startup? That sounds cool. I want to be involved." So personally, they've got this interest, and they're pulling a corporate line, and this makes a lot of sense. And we're familiar with this, but it's that P2P interaction which is going to move this thing along. So that is a very powerful position to be in for Thomas, and he's taking advantage of it. He's also working with IBM. Now, I've had a chance to work with IBM too, and that's kind of one of the situations where the engineers there are like, "Yeah, we got to do it this way," but then there's the sales obligations that IBM has. They have to push product. They have to stay on focus, on target with that message. So their messaging and their there's a little light between them, but there's no difference. They all want the same thing. They want this thing to be successful. So Thomas is working with IBM, and CoEngineers is still on the table. There's a lot of other projects out there, and CoEngineers is on the table. I had a long talk with Arup Corporation. One of their executives is putting together another paper. Last year they did one featuring us quite prominently, and hopefully they'll do the same this year. But Arup is one of the pioneers, one of the companies like Jacobs who's really stepping out. And we had a fantastic conversation. We actually solve a lot of problems that they have with the larger solutions, the enterprise solutions that are out there. They've got questions like, where's my data exist? Where does it persist? How do I, where do I put a paywall here? I mean, so they've got some very distinct problems that the existing solutions almost solve, but it looks like maybe we do solve because of the way we're structured. So it's very promising what we're seeing. So Kim and Thomas and Ben Amaba from IBM are going to be meeting in Denver next month. So that's going to be very interesting and very promising. And we'll see what happens there. I'm speaking again next week, the 8th and the 11th. We have speaking commitments for the Global Blockchain Summit in 4 weeks in Denver. The PLMX, which is the Product Lifecycle Management Conference in Chicago, is coming up in 4 weeks. We've got several people on the looking at us from the venture capitalist community, and this will all clarify once we roll out 10.5.5, because like a VC would fall under like a financial institution, so we would be able to categorize each of these the contacts. As far as governance is concerned, the directors team now has drafts to review for the terms of use, our private policy, and other key documents. So we got the 10.5.5 documents out there. The pitch deck is done. 6 tenets is published. Code of conduct, community constitution, corporate structure, roadmap, show me the money, white paper. These are all in states of near completion, and they likely have all the information that we need now to go to TGE. So the question is, when will the TGE be? So Blockhouse will set a date for us, and that'll be very helpful to work backwards to get there. So we anticipate the TGE will probably be early next year. February would probably be where I'd like to see it happen. And we've got a lot of work to do, but we've done a lot of work as well. We have a lot of opportunity to build a community out there, and there's a few other things going on with that. But we're now going to be leaning on Blockhouse to help us with that definition. So Discord as a forum has no edit history, so we have to kind of be careful of where we put these documents. I guess the work with Co-Creator right now, I believe, is doing that part of the operations for the documentation. So that would probably be a good place to go. And that's pretty much all I've got. It's a lot of work. I would go rehash old stuff, or we could open up for questions. What do you think?
Dan, I had a meeting last night. Actually, it was with the MIT alumni again, and they are a group of engineers. I'd like to see, get them further beyond past this. But the meeting last night, we had the chairman of the board of Gensler, which is the largest architecture firm in the world, give us a personalized brief on where they're going, what they're doing. And a lot of this is involving President Reif's initiatives at MIT on creating a better world. And I'm putting together a better world umbrella of MIT alumni on how that actually, what that looks like, what needs to be done to make that happen. And from my perspective, blockchain is a key to providing the proper metrics in communities to value the peer-to-peer relationships that are needed to establish resilient communities. And it's really those resilient communities that are going to be the foundation for having a better world. So that's just a short update.
Well, that's super important, because what I'm finding now is that blockchain is being used in finance and insurance simply because they have no form of making anything immutable. You can always reverse a legal document. You can always reverse a financial transaction with enough attorneys. Nothing is immutable, nothing is final, and blockchain is a solution for that finality. But engineering, we don't have that problem. You pour concrete, it's final. Or you can't return the wood to the tree. All that's final, and everything we do is immutable already. So blockchain is something completely different for us than it is for banks and insurance companies. And this is something that I'm learning quite a bit, is that the engineering community is sort of dissatisfied with blockchain as a solution because it answers a problem that we don't have. But it also can be a superpower. It's the thing. It's like the iron suit that Iron Man wears. The suit, I guess it flies itself, but it still needs the human, but it gives the human more power, or it amplifies the power that we already have. So that's kind of the tact that we're discovering about blockchain to the engineering profession. So speaking with groups of engineers has been very, very productive for us. So we appreciate what you're doing with the MIT group.
I'll be sharing this big picture perspective and how blockchain, I'm actually working that in parallel with updating my review of the white paper. It'll be a couple weeks before I get it out, though. I'm actually going on vacation.
Okay, well that's fine. Now let me introduce Gene. Gene is in DC, and he's got incredible talent for explaining things simply, complicated things simply, and that's from his work on Capitol Hill, trying to get policy through to politicians. So he's the perfect person to be reviewing our blockchain. He's also a nuclear engineer and a Navy retired Navy. I think he was captain. You said, right? So we're very lucky to have Gene working with us. And while we're here, let me introduce Randall. Randall is he's with the Government Blockchain Association, but he's been extremely productive with us. He's also an engineer, so he fits in really well with what we're doing, and he's given us a lot of opportunities to speak to different groups and set them up in a very good way, so they go very well for us. So I just want to thank Randall for helping us with that. And he'll be coming up to the director's side too, also, because his role is increasing in importance. So he'll be kind of moving up that rank with directors. Any other comments, announcements?
So Dan, you mentioned that we're talking with IBM a little bit more. So yeah, you hit it right on the nail when you said that CoEngineers is still on the table. It's still a project that's being looked at, and I can't say that I heard Ben say yesterday for possible investment, but it's still a tokenized blockchain is still a priority for IBM apparently. It's not a top priority, but it's not in one or two, but for their team that works in blockchain and AI, it's probably priority number 3 is what Ben told me yesterday. So, and the project that we're working on, CoEngineers and through IEBC, is still something that, as far as Ben is concerned, is still very much under consideration. It's being looked at as something that they could somehow get involved in. So at least that's kind of the language I got. He was very careful not to say anything that sounded committal or taking a step towards any kind of commitment. But I sense that our project is still very much on the radar screen for IBM as something to get involved in.
So what's going to happen is we're on the table with everybody, with Arab also. The people who are out there and the players are IBM, Hyperledger, Corda, Ethereum, and CoEngineers. I mean, we're on the same table as these billion-dollar monoliths out there. So we're not being ignored. And if one person falls, they're all going to fall. And my sense is it's going to come from the insurance industry. So that's kind of our secret weapon. We've got insurance and finance. If we get a bank or insurance company to jump on, then all the engineers are going to jump on because that's where the money is. Okay. So we have a strategy, and we're executing the strategy with quite a bit more success than you would think. But we're playing a game of three-level chess here, and we're making our moves in a very rational manner. And I can explain the strategy, another time. But be confident. We're doing we know what we're doing, and but once we do get money in the organization, we'll be staffing up rapidly, and then you'll see a lot of the other pieces fall into play.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I have next week I'll be meeting in person here in Denver with Jacobs Engineering's new Chief Technology / Innovation Officer, just for a one-on-one to talk about blockchain. And of course, you can bet that CoEngineers will be in the very front burner. In fact, I'm going to use pretty much the pitch deck, although I won't have a slide projector. I won't be showing PowerPoints or anything like that, but I'll be using all the key selling points that we've defined in the pitch deck next week. And there's also one of our, I'm not exactly sure what his role is. He's a higher level digital strategy person, works in the A10 half of the company, who I'm also going to be spending about Tuesday with. So just all of a sudden, a lot of awareness and interest and communication within my employer. And as you mentioned before, we've established a blockchain community of practice as well. And it's my intention to use that community of practice to lead, at least to really push for a leadership position within the innovation of this company. So those are the two big things: communication with IBM this week, and further communication within Jacobs.
That's interesting, because we also got another call from another media outlet, and that came to us by the CEO of the Construction Blockchain Association, a consortium. Okay, so this is the other consortium in Europe in the construction field. We're in the engineering field, and we've been emphasizing collaboration, and it's taking hold. I mean, they're pitching us stuff, we're pitching them stuff. And that's the way it's got to work. I mean, if you look at our last presentation, the one I did in Seattle, it's a 30-minute. We finally got the whole, change the world thing down to 30 minutes. We make the point where, isolation and trying to be the, that new black market currency. I mean, that's just not the right way to approach the problems that are facing us. Just not the right way. It has to be through collaboration, which is one of the 6 tenets of Curiosity. So we're really, this is working well, and I'm confident, but there's still a lot of hard work to do. and appreciate everybody's help with all of that. So we'll be publishing this video. I didn't publish last week's video. I'll get to it today. These are all going up on our channel, and they're half-hour long, so they should be fairly digestible. And we'll have another one next week. They're outward-facing, so anything you hear here can be shared publicly. And then let's all get together during the week and work out and do the working sessions with the directors. That's where the work gets done. All right. Thank you so much.